Greetings, football managers and fans, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll be going over 7 things I do when starting any new football manager save. So if you like this kind of content or find any of these tips helpful, please make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new bangers like this one, and join my Patreon for exclusive perks. And now, without any further ado, let us get started with the 7 things that you need to do when you start. Alright, so starting things off, the first thing we want to check is our club vision and go over the objectives to see what's expected of us from the board. So from what we can see in my example controlling Lazio here is that they want us to keep an even balance in the transfer market, increase commercial revenue through sales, grow the club's reputation, and work within wage budget. Now, the objectives will vary from club to club, as different boards will have different preferences. You'll have different competition objectives as well. As you can see on the bottom, they want us to at least reach the knockout stages of Champions League and have a top half finish in the Serie A, challenge for Coppa Italia, and be competitive in the Supercoppa Italiana. Again, those will vary from board to board, so make sure to keep a close eye and always make sure that you are satisfying the board objectives, because failing something that is required could bring you one step closer to a sack and therefore looking for a new job. Now, the same thing applies to supporter objectives as well. When you take a look at the supporters page on your club vision screen, you will have at least a couple like I do here. For us, in our case, they are requiring us to have a higher league finish than Roma and to qualify for Champions League. Again, each club will have a different set of objectives, so keeping a close eye on those. Item number 2 has everything to do with staff and coaching assignments. So looking at the screen here, we can see that Lazio currently have 5 out of 10 possible coaches that are signed on to a full-time staff role. If we take a look on the coaching team, we can either try to assess who should stay on as a full-time coach and who really needs to go, or you can leave this part up to your technical director if you have one, which we'll discuss a little bit later. So that part I will be leaving up to our technical director, and he can decide which coaching staff to bring in. Now, when it comes to the recruitment team, sort of the same thing applies, except this time you want to keep control of whom you're bringing in on your scouting team, be it your chief scout, your general manager, or your other scouts. What you want to focus on here is to make sure that you have scouts with good judging ability and judging potential ratings. So in our case, we would likely let go of someone like Massimo Radici here, or Radicchi, however you say it, and try to replace him with somebody who's at least a little bit better in those areas. Same thing goes for the 2 scouts above here, Pasculi and Gadini. And to accomplish that, you can either use staff search screen and search for scouts that cover those attributes, or you can place an advert and see who's interested in joining your club and then pick the best ones from that list. Now on to the 3rd item on our list, which deals with staff responsibilities. So if you take a look here, the first thing you really want to do here is when you go under the match heading in the responsibilities screen, you want to make sure that your backroom staff are not arranging friendly matches for the first team. Reason behind this is because, well, for the first season, they will mostly do an okay job at it. But when it comes around to the winter break and the following seasons, you will start to see that they're scheduling an increased amount of matches that are not spaced apart properly. For example, they might schedule a friendly against a team on a Wednesday and another team on a Friday, which would mean that your squad doesn't have enough time to rest between matches, and this could be a big problem, especially if you're lacking squad depth on the team that you are managing at the moment. After you take care of that, of course, always make sure to click confirm on the bottom to lock in the change. You want to take control of scouting yourself. For transfers and contracts, if you have a director of football or technical director, although a director of football can also handle that, you can assign him to handle the contract renewals. In my case with Lazio here, I don't have a technical director yet, so we'll get Fabiani, our general manager or director of football, to do that for us. For training, you want to take control of both youth teams that you have available to you and the reserve team if one is there. We'll cover this a little bit later on in depth. As far as anything else that you might want to do here, your player reports should go to the staff member who has the highest rating in judging player ability specifically. Generally speaking, this will be your director of football, or your head of youth development. In some cases, it might even be your director of football, depending on how your staff are set up. Anything else on here? There really isn't much to go over here. So, other than staff renewals, actually, one that I want to make sure I don't forget. You don't want to be bothered with this because you're already probably going to be negotiating some of the deals that your staff member in particular has negotiated with the players that you're trying to renew. As an example, they'll usually lock in yearly wage increase, which you probably want to remove from the contract. But that should take care of this section here. And we will move on to the next one. All right, on to tip number 4. And now that you have all of your scouting staff in place, it is time to set up some scouting assignments. Now, I've already set up the recruitment focuses here, and I will post a link in the description to IRNL's scouting method, which is phenomenal, to be honest. So basically, what this method focuses on is scouting players based on age groups, and I've set them up individually as well as overlapping, which he does recommend. But in terms of how you want to set up each and every one of them, this is his recommendation. And again, I will post a link to his video in the description, so you can feel free to check that out. So the basic premise is you want players coming in on a transfer. Set your age range You don't have to pick an area, although you can if you prefer to do so. And you can have this assigned to any one of your staff members or any one of your scouts, but in our example here, I've sorted by judging player potential and actually player ability, and I've just assigned individually each scout that I feel would be best at it. As you can see, not all of them are fully utilized here, but that's perfectly fine for now. Once you have that locked in, you just have to confirm it and the scouting assignment will start. Now, you also want to add in one scouting focus or recruitment focus for your formation, and one that I didn't do here yet, which I will set up right now, which we will pick any formation. We're not going to pick our specific one that we're using right at the moment. And what we want on this one is we want to find any players on expiring deals that might be a good fit for our team. So we're gonna go transfer there, and contract status expiring. Since we're in November here, I'm gonna pick expiring 1 year. And set your age range as well. You don't want them to be all the way up to 50 years old unless you prefer to bring in King Kazu himself. So in my case, I will go up to 27 years of age. Uncheck use any scout. Pick one of your scouts that's currently not utilized. So Giuseppe Lupo will take care of this one for us. Name that accordingly. And those will be expiring contracts, which he will bring in as time goes on. Generally speaking, you need a week to 2 weeks for them to generate some scouting reports for us, sometimes longer depending on how determined your scouts are. And that takes care of the recruitment focuses. Now the next step you want to do, you want to set up a short list for the scouted players, and then drop in all the ones that you think you will be signing in there. Only keep that list up to date. The rest of the lists you have, you can have one additional one, but the more of them that you are keeping up to date, the more you're taking out of your scouting budget, which could leave your club broke and going into administration, and let's face it, nobody wants to see that. So, I mean, unless you're Manchester United, then you're probably used to it by now. But anyway, that takes care of this portion of the tips that I have laid out for you, and we will move on to number 5. For tip number 5, we will be looking at our youth setups. In this case for Lazio, it will be under 18s and under 20 squads. And the aim with this is you want to identify any improvements that you could possibly make for both of the teams. First things first, you need to have second yellow cards views, and you will automatically have them if you use the SAS skin because they're built in there. But if you don't, you can I will post a link to his video from FM23 where he has them available for download in the description as well, so you can have a look into that. Once you have that, sort by potential. Take a look and see if there are any of those players that you might want to move on right away, or any of the ones that you might want to send out on loan. Right now I'm looking at the under 18 setup, and honestly no one here will be going out on loan until they turn 18. The same thing would apply for your under 20 squad. Now, one difference here, or I guess it could be applied to your under 18s as well, depending on how good your head of youth development is at judging potential ability. If they have a high potential, I would say above 4 stars or so, you might want to move them into a training unit so that they can train with your first team. And the way you can do that is by going into your training menu and click on units above, and then you can just add in any players that you might want to add to specific groups. And that way they will stay on the under 18s or under 20s squad, but they will be training with the senior team. Once you've identified that, find any high potential players that you know are not going to be getting any playing time with your senior squad, and you can send them out on loan. Generally speaking, when it comes to loans, you want to make sure that they're getting regular playing time. I tend to avoid sending my players out on loan if they're going to be getting anything less than a regular starter, so even a squad player is not something I prefer. But again, use your best judgment there, and whatever you deem to be necessary, you can do. Now, if you need to improve your youth setups, again, that's where your scouting or recruitment focuses from the previous section will come into play. And primarily you're looking for players that are under the age of, let's say, 18 or 19. Any of those that you might find, like we have 30 in progress over here, so somebody like Joao Rago is a little bit too expensive. Somebody like, I don't know, let's use Nolan Norris as an example here. So somebody like Norris here, if I was to bring him in, I would assign him to my under 20 squad, since he's above the age limit of 18. And he can stay on there but train with the first team. You can judge that accordingly, see how well he develops, and then move him up from there. So that basically covers the youth team setup portion, and we will move on to the next step. Alright, so for tip number 6, we've got loans. Yes, that's a shout out to Zealand. Anyway, when it comes to loans, first thing you want to do is you want to assess your squad by looking at your squad planner and identifying any potential holes that you might need to fill, a weakness that needs to be covered, which in Wrexham's case here would be on the right wing back side of things, at least according to the tactic that I'm using here, which is a custom tactic, but more on that later. So now that we know that we need a better right wing back, or a right defender, or a right fullback, whichever way you might want to refer to them, you could find one through the player search. I'm just going to clear this here, and let's say we are looking for players who are available for loan and who can play either a right back or a right wing back position. Of course, since we're not really using right wing back, I'll keep that unchecked right now. So we've got our list here. And you will need to, if you have the funds for it, pick some players from the list, scout them, see how well they fit within your squad. If they're a good fit, bring them in. Otherwise, you can just discard them. But let's say, for our sake, we wanted to bring in Harvey Neville here from Inter Miami. So if we go and make an offer for him, this is what you're looking for. So players you're bringing in on loan, generally speaking, you don't want to pay any wages or any wage contributions towards them. You want to bring them in for free, as long as their parent club is willing to offer you that. One thing I like to do here, I'll keep the agreed playing time on, but I lock in none selected for preferred position, because let's say you bring in a right wing back who can also play as a defensive midfielder, and halfway through the loan spell you decide that he fits your squad better as a defensive midfielder, but you promise to play him as a right back. Then the manager of Inter Miami in this case will probably get pretty ticked off with you, and he'll end up recalling the player. There's no question about that. But if you don't lock in a preferred, if you lock in preferred position as none, then you will not face that problem. So we're going to go ahead and suggest this here. Now, sometimes when you renegotiate that, they will want some wage contribution paid towards it. 130 per week is not that much, so we'll end up accepting that. And we'll bring in Harvey Neville as a right back here. Now again, this is a kind of a poor example because I don't know how well he's going to fit within our squad. So that's where scouting comes into play. You want to make sure you have them scouted at least for 1 week, just so you have a rough idea of how well they might fit within your system. But that's basically it for loans. So basically, take a look at your squad planner, assess any potential weaknesses, and address them using the player search, looking for players who might be available on loan. The other side of that would be if you have a senior affiliate club, like in FM23's example, Wrexham had an affiliation with Liverpool. So I could bring in anybody I wanted to from Liverpool on a free. So it might be worth exploring those options and taking a look to see which big clubs might be interested to become your senior affiliates, so that you can bring in young players at no cost from their setup. And so we've arrived at our last tip for today. And tip number 7 has everything to do with setting up your tactics. Now, there are more than a few ways to set this up. You might have a favorite manager that you might want to emulate, like Roberto De Zerbi or Jose Mourinho or Pep Guardiola. But when it comes to setting up your tactics, especially for smaller clubs, keeping things simple is probably your best option, especially if you're playing in lower leagues of the English system, as an example, or if you have custom databases downloaded and you're starting in a country like, let's say, Serbia or Poland, as an example, in a lower system than what's available through the base game. You don't want to confuse your players, because a lot of them will not be able to handle additional tactical instructions. Now, I will be creating my own style, and this is for Lazio here. So basically you want to, actually let's restart that. So if you go back and you take a look at your tactical style screen here, your assistant manager already has some recommendations. Those can be good, depending on the team again, but some of them might have a little bit too many instructions, if you will. So I actually prefer to create my own style here, and that is what we'll go with. I'll pick a 442 just as a base canvas, if you will. And the next thing is you want to sort by ability. Now there will be a bonus step at the end of this one, and you will see a little bit later on what that is towards the end of the video. But what we want to do here is we want to make sure that each one of our players is playing in their best assigned position. So let's put in Luis Alberto here. He is more of an advanced playmaker. I might want to play him somewhere up here. So let's put him on advanced playmaker on support, as it suggests right there. Now if you're using the SAS skin, the little pie graph or the circle graph below the player's number is not going to update right away. Hit the back arrow, go forward once, and it should be updated. Zaccagni is a left winger, so we're going to put him here, and he needs to be playing on as an inside forward on support. Same principle. See how it updated there right now. Prevedo is a sweeper keeper on attack. Now some of these are up to interpretation, so to say. I don't like playing sweeper keepers on attack. I'll generally have them on support or defend duty, so Prevedo will go in as a sweeper keeper on support. Romagnoli, it does state that he's a wide center back here. However, Romagnoli is really good at passing, and he's got decent technique for a central defender. So what we want to do with him is probably play him as a ball-playing defender. And again, back forward, that updates. Ciro Immobile, I would like to play him as an advanced forward, and he still does well in that regard, but we'll put him in as a poacher for the sake of this tip here. Felipe Anderson is a winger, so we might want to move him up here, or actually we're going to move him here. Yeah, this is how we're going to set it up. So Felipe Anderson will go in here, and he's a winger on support. Again, support or attack, it'll be the same for him because he's very proficient in either one of those duties. And next up we got Pacino. We're going to move him down to defensive midfielder. Play him as, well, he has a box-to-box kind of guy actually, so yeah, let's move him back up there. Again, a perfect pie chart there, if you will. Castellanos will be on the bench. We'll play Patrick next to Romagnoli. Same principle applies. So ball-playing defender. Marusic can go on the left. He's a defensive wing back. Okay, that's looking good. Guendouzi will come here, and we'll play him as a Mezzala, as it suggests on the squad sheet. Mezzala on support. So that's near perfect right there. And last but not least, Manuel Lazzari will come in as a complete wingback on support. So that takes care of the role assignments. As you can see, everything is near perfect here. Now, in terms of the instructions, you have to decide how you want your team to play. Do you want them to be more attacking? Do you want to keep them back behind the ball, kind of like what Mourinho does, and play boring football, but winning football for the most part? So that part is up to you. In my case, I will have them on positive mentality, and we're going to go and adjust the in possession, in transition, and out of possession styles. So since we're playing a 4-2-3-1, I would like them to be a little more compact. So I'm going to move them to a fairly narrower setup. We do want to pass the ball into space. Again, in this portion, play to your team's strengths. Like this, in possession, this is your build-up play. This is how you want them to move throughout the pitch when you have possession of the ball. Now, I prefer playing out of defense, and since we are using a 4-2-3-1, I'll add an underlap on the left and overlap on the right. That's just to cause some chaos in front of the opposition box. For passing, I prefer to play shorter or much shorter passing, possession-based football. So, and we're gonna go to slightly higher tempo here. And crosses, again, personal preference. I find that low crosses are way more enjoyable to watch, especially in this year's match engine. Could leave it at that for now. For transition, gegenpress is basically counter pressing with counter turned on. There's nothing else to it. And I prefer my goalkeeper to distribute short to center backs and to full backs. And that's basically it there. And out of possession, now again, if you want to play like Jose Mourinho, low block and lower defensive line. That's basically all there is to it. And maybe have them close down slightly less often. But if you want to play a more attractive brand of football, I would have them either on standard or higher line. I actually prefer standard. Prevent short goalkeeper distribution, close down much more often, and that is basically it. So tactics will vary from team to team and the kind of players you have available to you. So always have a look and work within the game's parameters to have them set up accordingly. So we've come to the bonus tips section of the video, and for those of you who've stuck around for the duration, thank you very much. But we will move on to discuss what needs to be discussed here. So first things first, player instructions. If you do want to adjust them, my honest suggestion would be to start from the forward and go and move your way downwards the lineup. So if we take a look at Ciro Immobile here, what we want him to do is we want him to apply pressure onto the opponents. Specifically, we want him to apply pressure onto center backs. So we'll have him tackle harder, mark tighter, and mark the center back position. Now this is just to go along with the possession style of play that we're trying to achieve here. Felipe Anderson, since he's playing on as a right winger, we'll have him mark the left wing back, and the same principle applies there. Luis Alberto, for him it'll be slightly different. Since he's an advanced playmaker and support, we'll have him move into channels and roam from position. That's it. And for Zaccagni, he will mark the right defender on the opposing team and also tackle harder. Also notice that we're not marking tighter with our wingers, only the forward. And for the central midfielders, generally I have them ease off of tackles. And for Guendouzi in this case, we'll let him dribble more, but take fewer risks. And sort of the same thing will apply to Vecino here. He will take fewer risks, but he will tackle harder. Now for the wing backs, what I like to do here is trigger press less often, tackle harder, or actually no, ease off tackles, pardon me. We're not going to mark a specific position there, and we're going to have him that's about it. And the same thing will apply here. So ease off tackles, trigger press less often. Yep, that'll work. Now for our center backs, you want to make sure that they're marking the general striker area, and they'll also trigger press. Actually, they will trigger press normally, tackle harder, mark tighter to restrict the space on them. And the same thing for Romagnoli here. So that is the first bonus step. And the other thing I wanted to cover is with regards to the star ratings on your team. So I'm using my own view here, which I will make available on my Patreon. What you want to do in this case, you don't really want to heavily rely on the star ratings. That's one thing I didn't mention earlier. I know I said sort by star ratings when you're setting up your tactics, etc. But one thing that is way more important than your star ratings, because let's face it, your scouts could be wrong. But one thing that is more important than the star ratings themselves are the attributes. Always look at what kind of role you're looking for your player to play, and go with that. Like, your scout could find someone who's only rated as 2 stars for your team, and let's say he's a striker like Tari Castellanos here, but when you look at the player, even though he's 2 stars, he might have the Holy Trinity in place there, which is dribbling, finishing, first touch, and he might also have good pace and acceleration. And if he has a good work rate to go along with that, so what I classify as good would be anything above 14, let's say. But if he's got those in place and he's only 2 stars, give him playing time, because he will perform. And with that being said, that takes care of the bonus section and this entire video. So thank you very much for sticking through with me for this one, and I will see you back again for the next one. And of course, if you enjoyed the content, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and check out my Patreon for exclusive perks and other content.